All right, welcome everybody to our BSPU call this week. Today is a follow-up to last week's call where I shared about two books that I'm reading. Actually, one I finished reading, one I'm reading for the second time. They're both Dr. Benjamin Hardy's books. One is called Be Your Future Self Now, and we talked about that last week. And today we're going to talk about the science of scaling, and I'm going to give you a breakdown of that. It's a book that's really impacted me. I love it. I love his thinking behind it. It is in some ways a follow-up. It's not a direct follow-up, but in some ways it's a follow-up to the ideas that he shares in Be Your Future Self Now. But it is, as evidenced by the title, The Science of Scaling, right? Grow your business bigger and faster than you think possible. The idea is taking those psychological processes and deep teachings and applying it to our goals as related to our businesses. And so I've really enjoyed that. I'm going to go through that a second time when I'm done with Be Your Future Self Now because I loved it so much and I want to go back through it. So today, what I want to do is I want to dive in. We'll start with kind of the big idea of the book, and then we're going to dive in and I'm going to talk to you about the main elements of the book itself, the framework, if you will. And then, of course, I do have a document. I did not share the document with you because it was a working document up until now. And so I will share it right after. Some of you had asked about it. Forgive me. I said I would share it, but I meant I would share it after I had some more work to do on the document. So I will put that in the Facebook group. It is all ready to go at this point. Okay, the science of scaling, Dr. Benjamin Hardy. All right, the core premise of this is that most businesses do not scale, and there is a reason, maybe a core idea behind why they do not grow. And in fact, most die. Most small businesses die. I don't remember exactly what the Small Business Association statistics are, but it is something like after 5 years, more than 90 or 95% of all small businesses close. That's quite a poor and telling stat. So what Hardy does is he argues that most businesses in general fail to scale, not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack clarity, courage, and a proper model to scale the business. It's not a matter of opportunity. In fact, opportunity itself may be one of the big problems because more opportunity, as your business grows, more opportunity means less clarity of direction for your business. So he says business owners are stuck trying to optimize things in their businesses that probably shouldn't even exist. They're stuck in low leverage activities that aren't taking you where you want your business to go. And your business can very easily grow in complexity. And because of that, scaling becomes impossible. So what the book does is it kind of flips all of that on its head, and it takes Dr. Hardy takes a very different kind of tact than most people I've ever seen talk about in goal setting. And that is that if your goal is realistic, your business is probably doomed to failure. That's like quite contrarian. Your goal needs to be so big and your timeline to reach your goal so short that it forces a complete reconfiguration of how you think, how you act, how you hire, how you sell, how you focus. Okay? Let me say that again. If you want to grow your business, I'll take one step back. If you've been in business for a set period of time and your business isn't growing, then you should know just innately you are doing the wrong things, right? And as Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. So Dr. Hardy takes a completely different tact, and that is, if you want to grow your business and in fact scale your business, then you need a goal so big, so enormous, and you need a timeline to achieve that goal so short that it forces you to think about your business in an entirely different way than you've ever thought about it before. It forces you to hire, to act quickly, decisively. It forces you to focus in a completely different way, this impossible goal. So the idea of the impossible goal is, for him, it's like this engine of transformation. Okay, it's the centerpiece of this science of scaling, this impossible goal and this impossible timeline of your goal. It's his definition is a goal that radically exceeds your current capacity, your current systems, and forces you to innovate, to simplify your business and thus scale it. Okay? A complex business cannot scale. Your business must be simple and it must be innovative. It must be different than it is right now, or it will not be able to scale. So this idea, this impossible goal works because it's so big that your current model can't handle it. So whatever you're doing right now, if you set a goal that's so big and a timeline that is so close and urgent, then whatever you're doing right now does not work, period. That's the way you have to think about this goal. This is not to grow your business by 20% or 50% or double your business in 3 years, right? And that's not bad. But this is so big and so enormous that creates urgency in you now. You cannot delay action. It forces you also to get honest with yourself about what's not working in your business. It forces you to really look at things that are distractions in your business, shiny objects perhaps, and zero in on the few things in your business that really move the needle. It's the 80-20 rule, but times 2 or 3, right? It's the 80-20 of the 20 and the 80-20 of the next 20. So an impossible goal is something that you achieve with your current business because it transforms you and your current business. He gives the example of John F. Kennedy when he was in office. And most of us are really probably too young to really remember what that time was like. Maybe we were kids in the early 60s or late 50s. And Hardy talks about all the things that was going on in the world. Of course, the Cold War, communism, the idea that that capitalism, that democracy might actually lose to these closed and communistic societies. And of course, the Soviets put a man into space before the US did. Some of you may know this or may not know this, but actually Simeon Kosberg, who is a very distant relative of mine, my ancestors came to the United States in the late 1800s, right around the turn of the 20th century. And they were escaping Jewish persecution of the czars in Russia. So we come from Belarus and in that area. And of course, there are a number of ancestors that remain there. One of my ancestors was actually the number 2 man in the Russian space program, Simeon Kosberg. And there's a crater named the Kosberg crater on the moon, which is kind of cool for me because I have a son that actually he worked for NASA for 5 years. He's a rocket scientist and now works for a company called Relativity. So all cool. So I dig all of this stuff. So when he's talking about it, I go, I may not personally have the brain power to do any of that, but maybe my son does, and maybe that's transferred several generations. I don't know. But the point is that JFK looked at all the various things that he could do to perhaps put capitalism, democracy ahead of, in place of, in the world's eye, communism and the Soviet Union. And of all those things, JFK decided that putting a man on the moon in the early 1960s when he gave that speech was going to be the thing that put America on the map as the most innovative, the most powerful, not just from a defense or military, but, the most aspirational of countries rather than a communistic and closed and less free society. And of course, Kennedy said that we would put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. The interesting thing is we, of course, achieved that. But the interesting thing is Hardy actually says we really didn't need 7 years or so. I think it was 1962 that he made that speech to put a man on the moon. Now, that was an impossible goal. Of course, it was an impossible goal. At the same time, it probably could have been achieved even sooner than that with the urgency and the strength behind it. So this is the idea behind the impossible goal. There's a psychological power behind it as well. We talked about this. This is the follow-up from last week. And that is that your future self, right? The future you, the future goal you have for you is really what determines your present behavior. Okay? It's not the tragedies of your past. It's not the pain or the difficulties of your past. Yes, those things are scars and perhaps things that cause us a certain fear, etc. But we are motivated and we are moved by what is in front of us, by our future self. And so our goals become filters. They determine what we notice, what we prioritize, what we say yes to, what we say no to, what we walk away from. Right? And if you have small goals in your life, this is noise. This is a distraction to you. A small goal is not what you want. You want an impossible goal that forces you to change and to be different. A small goal doesn't necessarily do that. Okay. Another way to think about it is, and he doesn't talk about this directly in this book, but he talks about it in his 10x is greater than 2x book. And that is, if you want to grow your business by 10% between now and next year, there are 1,000 things you can do to grow your business by 10%. 1,000 things. So how do you pick the right one? You probably don't. But if you want to grow your business by 10 times between now and 1 year from now, there's probably only one or two things that you could really do to reach that goal. Do you see the difference? One is noisy and full of distractions, small goal. The other is a massive goal, and it makes you laser focused on what it is that you need to achieve. And there's only probably one or two things that you could ever do to achieve it. Okay. Now, by the way, obviously we're talking about business and scaling, but this applies to every area of your life. This applies to your health. This applies to your relationships. This applies to the future you, whatever that future you want to be. Okay. Hardy suggests that we use this impossible goal idea as a filter. Okay. What would be required if you have a goal for your life? You begin filtering it with this impossible goal idea by asking questions like, what would be required for me to 10x this goal in 1/10 the time? Like, ask yourself tough questions like that. And before you write it off immediately, which is the tendency, right? It's like, oh, that's impossible. No one can do that. Before you do that, be honest. If others have achieved that kind of thing, and you know they have, then there are ways to do it. Now, you may decide that you don't want to do that. That's also important, right? Because then it sends you in the direction that you want to go in your life and in your business. So this science of scaling has a framework. Okay, I'm giving you all of what I've talked about up until now is kind of the general premise, the overall view of it. The science of scaling has this framework, and he uses three things for the framework, and the book is structured around these three elements. First is what he calls the frame. The frame is you need to change what you see by changing your goals. Okay, that's kind of where the impossible goal starts. Number two is the floor. The floor is you define what you will not any longer do, okay? That it's not what I will do, it's what I will not do. This is the floor, right? The ceiling has now been raised so high, we now have to raise the floor as well, because that's going to mean that probably 80% of the things that you do right now, you have to stop doing and you have to do something different. And then last but not least, he talks about the focus. So frame, floor, focus, and the focus is a filter where you filter out the few things that you do need to do to actually scale. Okay, so let's talk about these three things, and then I'll open it up for any questions that you guys have as related to this or anything else. So number one is to change your frame. The main idea is you set a goal so big and a timeline so short that it seems impossible. Really, it seems impossible. And that impossible goal acts as a filter for you. It forces you to be clear, innovative, and honest. Most businesses fail, I've already shared, not because the goal was unattainable, but because the goal was too easy. And there were a lot of other ways, there were a lot of things that they could have done to achieve it, and it caused complexity in the business, it caused noise to creep in, and it didn't give them clarity of focus or urgency, okay? Impossible goals force urgency. So what does it do? What is this idea of the frame and the impossible goal does? Well, number one, it changes your lens. Okay. You know, if you're interested in buying a new car and you've decided that you want to get a red Honda Accord, what do you start seeing on the highway everywhere? Well, you start seeing red cars and you start seeing Honda Accords and you start seeing red Honda Accords. Now, does that mean that somehow God made them magically appear? No, they were always there. They were always there. Your brain has to handle so much information on a regular basis that it filters out all of this noise except for what you have decided is important to you. So when you have an impossible goal and you're serious about it in an urgent timeline, it changes your lens. It changes what you begin to see and what you don't. Why is it that you can have a consultation with a coach, with somebody that maybe knows you a little bit, maybe knows your business a little bit, and they'll ask 5 or 6 questions and they'll point things out to you in your life and in your business that are like absolutely the things that if you did them, they would change your life? Why can a coach do that? Because a coach is looking for it and because you're stuck in the noise of it, okay? It was always there. The answer was always there. The solution was always there, but your lens was not focused on it. So it forces you to change your lens. It forces you to get real about what will actually move you toward the goal. Okay. The example, as I shared, was this idea of we're going to grow 10% this year or 20% this year to we're going to grow 10x this year, 10 times. That forces an entirely different kind of thinking. It changes your frame. Okay. That's part one. Part two is you raise your floor. What's the idea? The idea is you stop doing what doesn't serve your impossible goal. You stop it. Not that you only do it a little bit. You completely stop it. My dad was an example of this when he was in real estate. I remember my dad, he owned a very successful real estate company and a number of real estate companies. And that's how I got into the business when I was 18 years old. I got my real estate license and then I got my broker's license at 19. And I remember my dad was invited to take a condo listing, right? He was invited by a past client. Hey, I have this condo and I'd like you to list it to sell it. My dad wouldn't list it. I mean, this is 30 years ago, longer than that probably. This is probably 40 years ago. And so I don't know what it was, 30 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand. And he wouldn't list it. He gave it to one of the other associates in the office. And I was like, Dad, what? Why? I mean, it's free money. He goes, that's below my threshold. He didn't talk about floor frame or any of that. He just said, no, I only work with people that are interested in homes at this level and above. That means that everything else is a distraction and I don't take that. Let me tell you, that was powerful. That was a memory that I have from when I was 20 years old, 40 years ago. He raised the floor. Well, you know what? That's sacrificial to do. That's hard to do when you're saying no to money, when you're saying no to opportunity. But sometimes opportunity is really just a distraction to you. And if you spent and focused your time instead by raising the floor on only the activities that would really help you to scale your business and scale your book and scale your life, you would get there faster. And in fact, you won't get there at all unless you do raise the floor. So this forces you to quit the wrong stuff, the stuff that you're doing right now that isn't going to get you to your goal. Most businesses are deluded by all these legacy things that they do. All these distractions, all these fear-based decisions. If you raise your floor and you say, I'm not doing that anymore, it forces you to move towards your goal. You create a minimum standard, right? If a client, an offer, an opportunity doesn't meet that standard, you eliminate it. It's done. It's over. I only do this. Simplification is a superpower. Simplification allows you to scale. Complexity does not. Okay, so what does this do? Well, anything that doesn't serve the impossible goal, gone, out. Clients who aren't a fit, gone, cut. Legacy services, changed, eliminated, perhaps. Tasks done out of fear or because you've already sunk a lot of cost into it, move away from it, right? Businesses die because of complexity, not because of competition. It's really powerful. The idea again, raise your floor. And part three, and finally, is accelerate your focus. The main idea is you need to build a model that can scale beyond just you. Okay? What does that look like? Well, you create a defined path and a scalable model, not built on personal hustle, but a model built on simplicity and scalability. How do you do that? Well, hiring world-class talent, simplifying your offer and your delivery model, clarifying your position so you're the only one or the best option in your space. This is what eliminates all of the bottlenecks within your business. You have systems. If your business is larger, you have teams that are A+ players, and you have products that scale without you. Okay. Now, let me just say this. Some of you may not be interested in building a business like that scales to enormous levels. At the same time, you want to build a business that is scalable and incredibly profitable for you. The more complex the business is, the less profitable it will be for you. So these apply to whatever it is that you want to build. It should be simple and, as much as possible, should eliminate the time challenge upon you. Otherwise, you can't do then what you're best at. So you stop chasing everything that could work. There's a lot of things that could work, and you double down on the things that must work. All right, some final key takeaways, and then we'll open it up for any questions. Key takeaway number one: don't scale what shouldn't exist. If something shouldn't exist and it's not scalable in your business, then the best thing to do is to remove it, not try to optimize it. Number two, set a moonshot goal. And this doesn't have to just apply to your business, as I said. Your current frame, your current lens is too small. Scale starts by breaking your own psychological limits for your future self. Start there with a moonshot. Eliminate the noise. Anything that doesn't directly move you to that goal, it's a distraction as related to that thing. And then build a system around it, not a hero business, right? A system that is scalable beyond you, not that will fall apart if you're not there as a part of it. So that is the idea behind the science of scaling. One last overview. You have the three main parts of it: frame, which is changing what you see by changing your goals. You have floor, which is about defining what you will not do. And then you have focus, which is about filtering so that you know what the few things are that need to be done so you can actually scale.